There's a moment that changes everything. A moment when the fog lifts, the spell breaks, and you see with terrifying clarity what you've been dancing with all along. It doesn't arrive with fanfare or drama. It comes quietly like dawn breaking over a battlefield you didn't know you were fighting on. Have you ever felt it? That sudden, sickening recognition when the person you thought you knew dissolves before your eyes, revealing something else entirely. When years of confusion suddenly crystallize into devastating understanding. If you're watching this, you probably have. And if you haven't yet, what I'm about to share may prepare you for one of the most profound psychological awakenings you'll ever experience. This isn't just about relationships. This isn't just about narcissists and empaths. This is about something far deeper, a sacred initiation into wholeness that Carl Jung understood better than perhaps any psychologist who ever lived. Jung called it individuation, the process by which we become who we truly are. But here's what most people don't understand. Sometimes the path to becoming yourself requires you to first see clearly what you are not and what you've been unconsciously attracted to. The empath-narcissist dynamic isn't just psychological dysfunction. It's archetypal drama playing out in the theater of your soul. And the moment of recognition, that instant when you finally see through the mask, isn't ending. It's beginning. Your real life is about to start. Before we dive deeper, if this resonates with your soul's journey, please hit that like button and subscribe for more transformational content. Your support helps this message reach other souls who need to hear it. To understand what happens when the empath finally sees the narcissist clearly, we must first understand what Jung discovered about the unconscious forces that draw these two souls together. The empath carries an ancient archetype, the wounded healer. You feel everything. You absorb pain like a sponge absorbs water. You've spent your life trying to heal others, believing somehow that if you could just love them enough, save them enough, you might finally heal the original wound within yourself. You are Chiron, the mythical centaur, who could heal everyone except himself. You are the sensitive child who learned that love meant taking care of others' feelings before your own. You carry the sacred wound of the world, always seeking to transform suffering into meaning. But what draws you again and again to the narcissist? The narcissist embodies a different archetype, the masked king. They appear as grandiosity incarnate, radiating confidence, charm, and power. But Jung understood what lies beneath profound emptiness. They are both king and captive in their own palace of mirrors, desperately seeking reflection to convince themselves they exist. They are Narcissus, forever gazing into still water, unable to love anything real, because they've never encountered their true self. They are the child who learned that being loved meant being perfect, admired, special, and who built a magnificent fortress around their terror of being ordinary, human, vulnerable. Now here's where Jung's genius illuminates everything. Your attraction to each other isn't accidental. It's not bad luck or poor judgment. It's unconscious choreography. The empath's infinite capacity to give meets the narcissist's infinite need to receive. Your yearning for deep intimacy collides with their hunger for constant adoration. You offer healing. They offer the illusion of being whole enough to heal others. But what really happens is something far more complex. You project your own unlived wholeness onto them. They become the carrier of everything you believe you lack: confidence, self-assuredness, the ability to put themselves first. And they project their unlived vulnerability onto you, using your empathy as proof that they can still feel. This isn't partnership. This is archetypal collision, a dance of ancient patterns that your souls recognize even when your minds don't understand. Jung called this phenomenon unconscious participation. You're not really relating to each other as you are. You're relating to each other as symbols of what you each believe you need to become whole. The empath thinks, if I can earn their love, I'll finally be worthy. The narcissist thinks, if they keep reflecting my perfection, I'll never have to face my emptiness. Both of you are seeking the same thing, to feel real, valuable, lovable. But you're seeking it in each other instead of within yourselves. And this Jung understood is where the real tragedy begins. Because neither of you can give the other what you're truly seeking. The empath cannot heal the narcissist's wound by loving them harder. The narcissist cannot fill the empath's emptiness by accepting their gifts. You're both trying to complete yourselves through the other, which means you're both doomed to disappointment. And yet, this very impossibility contains the seed of transformation. The collision creates what Jung called enantiodromia, the tendency of things to turn into their opposite when taken to extremes. Your desperate attempt to love becomes a school for learning boundaries. Their cruel rejection becomes a teacher of self-worth. The very dynamic that wounds you becomes the catalyst for your healing. But this transformation only occurs when you finally see what's really happening. When you recognize the unconscious choreography for what it is. When you understand that you're not loving a person, you're trying to integrate a missing part of yourself through them. Let me paint you a picture of what this dance looks like from the inside, because understanding the illusion is crucial to understanding why the awakening is so shattering. In the beginning, the empath enters what feels like a beautiful palace. Everything gleams. The narcissist appears radiant, confident, almost magical in their certainty about themselves and the world. You think you found someone who has mastered what you struggle with. Self-love, boundaries, the ability to believe in their own worth. You project wholeness onto their charisma mistake, intensity for intimacy, confuse their need for attention with genuine connection. They seem so sure of themselves that you believe they must have something figured out that you haven't. But Jung understood that what you're seeing isn't a person. It's a persona, a carefully constructed mask designed to hide what lies beneath. You're not falling in love with them. You're falling in love with your own projected image of completion. Meanwhile, the narcissist sees in you everything they've had to exile from themselves. Your vulnerability, your authenticity, your capacity to feel deeply. All the human qualities they've deemed dangerous to their survival. They're both envious of and contemptuous toward these qualities, which is why they simultaneously idealize and devalue you. As time passes, you begin to notice cracks in the palace walls, moments when the mask slips, times when their grandiosity feels forced, their confidence brittle, their charm mechanical. But your unconscious mind resists these perceptions because they threaten the very foundation of your hope. You've invested so much in believing this person can love you the way you need to be loved. You've poured your healing energy into them like water into sand, believing that if you just find the right amount, the right approach, you can make something grow. But here's what Jung saw that most people miss. The narcissist isn't your enemy. They're not even your problem. They're your teacher, though neither of you knows it. Every pattern that frustrates you is showing you something about your own unconscious. Every time they fail to see you, they're reflecting how you fail to see yourself. Every time they prioritize their needs over yours, they're showing you how completely you abandon your own needs for others. The narcissist is possessed by what Jung would call a wounded god, an archetype of power that has become corrupted by fear. They are both the dragon guarding the treasure and the prince imprisoned in the tower. Their cruelty isn't pure evil. It's the shadow side of profound suffering. But you are not meant to save them. You are meant to see yourself in the mirror they provide. Every time you excuse their behavior, you're practicing self-abandonment. Every time you interpret their cruelty as pain, you need to heal. You're avoiding the pain within yourself that needs attention. Every time you wait for them to validate your worth, you're confirming your belief that your worth comes from outside yourself. This is the mythic parallel Jung recognized. You are echo, slowly fading away as you reflect back only what Narcissus wants to hear. You are Persephone lured into the underworld by someone who promises love but delivers only isolation. You are beauty believing your love can transform the beast, not realizing that the beast is the unloved parts of yourself. But in every myth, the descent serves a purpose. The underworld isn't just punishment, it's initiation. And your time in the narcissist's Hall of Mirrors isn't just suffering, it's preparation for rebirth. The moment of recognition, when you finally see clearly, comes when you can no longer maintain the illusion that this dynamic is about love. It comes when you realize that every interaction is actually about them managing their own emotional state, and you've become a supporting actor in the story of their survival. You see that their love bombing wasn't about seeing your specialness. It was about securing your devotion. Their intermittent reinforcement wasn't about rewarding your goodness. It was about keeping you hoping. Their hot and cold behavior wasn't about their confusion. It was about maintaining control. And in that moment of recognition, something dies. The fantasy of being chosen, of being the one who could reach their heart, of being worthy of the love you've been seeking. It dies, and it feels like you're dying too. But Jung knew something about death that changes everything in the psyche. Death always precedes rebirth. The palace you thought was beautiful reveals itself as a house of mirrors, each reflection more distorted than the last. The person you thought was your salvation reveals themselves as someone who cannot even save themselves. The love you thought was real reveals itself as projection, performance, and desperate hope. This revelation is devastating because it means everything you believed about love, about yourself, about what was possible between two people has been an illusion. But it's also liberating because it means you can stop trying to make the impossible work. You can finally turn your attention to what is actually possible, loving yourself with the devotion you've been giving to someone who cannot receive it. The moment of seeing clearly is brutal. It's the psychological equivalent of watching your own world collapse. Everything you believed about love, about yourself, about what was possible between two people, all of it crumbles at once. Your mind resists. How can it not? You've built your entire emotional reality around the hope that this person could love, you could see, you could finally give you what you've been seeking your whole life. To accept that they can't or won't means accepting that you've been chasing a mirage. Jung called this resistance the ego's attempt to avoid transformation. The ego prefers familiar suffering to unfamiliar growth. It would rather cling to a painful story than face the unknown territory of a new one. But the truth, once glimpsed, becomes impossible to unsee. And this is where the real work begins. The first phase is what Jung called the nigredo, the blackening. Everything you thought you knew about love feels contaminated. You question every moment of tenderness, wondering what was real and what was manipulation. You replay conversations looking for clues you missed, signs you ignored, red flags you painted green with your own hope. You feel foolish. How could you not have seen it sooner? How could someone so sensitive to others' pain be so blind to their own exploitation? How could you have mistaken crumbs for a feast? Manipulation? For love, intermittent reinforcement, for genuine affection. This is the grief process, and it's sacred. You're not just mourning the relationship, you're mourning the version of yourself that could believe in that kind of love. You're mourning the innocence that made you vulnerable to such profound disappointment. But hidden within this grief is the most precious gift you're finally grieving for yourself. For the first time, maybe ever, you're feeling the full weight of your own abandonment. Not their abandonment of you, your abandonment of you. Every time you explained away their cruelty. Every time you blamed yourself for their behavior. Every time you twisted yourself into shapes you thought they might love. This is where Jung's understanding becomes revolutionary. The narcissist wasn't doing something to you. They were revealing something about you. They were showing you how completely you had learned to betray yourself in the name of love. Your dreams during this period often reflect this inner transformation. Jung paid careful attention to dreams because he understood they reveal the psyche's natural healing process. You might dream of empty houses representing the hollowed-out self you've become. Dark forests representing the unknown territory of your authentic self. Underground passages representing the descent into your own unconscious. Sometimes you dream of the narcissist as various figures. A seducer who disappears when you reach for them, a tyrant who shrinks when you refuse to bow, a shapeshifter who can't maintain any form. These dreams are your psyche processing the illusion, integrating the truth. But the most important dreams are the ones where you begin to appear differently, where you find your voice, set a boundary, walk away from situations that diminish you, where you discover rooms in yourself you'd forgotten existed. Rooms of solitude, creativity, power, joy. The practical work of integration involves what Jung called active imagination, consciously dialoguing with the parts of yourself that have been unconscious. You ask the part of you that attracted this dynamic, what were you seeking? What did you believe this person could give you? And slowly, painfully, beautifully, you begin to understand. You were seeking the love you never learned to give yourself. You were trying to heal the wound of feeling unworthy by finding someone who would deem you worthy. You were attempting to prove your value by becoming valuable to someone else. But the narcissist couldn't give you these things because they don't have them to give. They're seeking the same things you are, just through different strategies. They try to feel valuable by making others need them. They try to feel love by inspiring obsession. They try to feel real by creating drama. You were both trying to use each other to solve internal problems that can only be solved internally. This realization is the turning point. Not because it makes everything better immediately, but because it shifts the focus from them to you. From external validation to internal healing. From trying to earn love to learning to generate it. Jung understood that every external relationship is a reflection of our internal relationship with ourselves. The narcissist could only treat you as poorly as you had already learned to treat yourself. They could only dismiss your needs because you had already dismissed them. They could only take you for granted because you had never learned to value your own presence. This isn't self-blame. This is self-responsibility. And it's the difference between remaining a victim of your patterns and becoming the author of your transformation. The integration phase involves slowly, carefully, lovingly learning to parent the parts of yourself that were abandoned in childhood. The part that learned love meant sacrifice. The part that believed your needs were too much. The part that was convinced your sensitivity was a burden rather than a gift. You begin to set boundaries not as walls against others, but as loving containers for your own energy. You start to say no to what depletes you and yes to what nourishes you. You discover that your capacity to feel deeply isn't a weakness to be hidden, but a strength to be honored. And something miraculous happens. As you stop abandoning yourself, you become less attractive to people who want to abandon you too. The albedo phase, the whitening, brings clarity. You start to see patterns not just in this relationship, but in all your relationships. You recognize how the narcissistic dynamic was just the most extreme version of a pattern that began long ago. Perhaps with a parent who was emotionally unavailable, a caregiver who was overwhelmed, a family system that taught you love was conditional. You understand that the narcissist was never the source of your wound. They were just the person who activated it, who pressed on it until it could no longer be ignored. The citrinitis, the yellowing, brings integration. You begin to see that this painful experience has served your growth in ways you never could have imagined. You've developed discernment boundaries, self-awareness, and most importantly, a relationship with yourself that no one can ever take away. Finally, the rubido, the reddening, brings transformation. You emerge not just healed, but actually stronger than before. Your capacity for love has been refined. Your ability to discern has been sharpened. Your commitment to honoring yourself has been forged in the fire of experience. The final phase of this archetypal journey is what Jung called the return. But you're not returning to where you started. You're returning to who you've always been beneath all the conditioning, all the wounds, all the desperate attempts to earn love from people incapable of giving it. Your love transforms first. Where you once loved indiscriminately, pouring your heart into anyone who seemed to need it, you now love with wisdom. Your compassion develops boundaries. Your empathy comes with self-preservation. Your healing energy is reserved for those who can receive it without exploiting it. This doesn't make you hard or closed. It makes you real. Jung understood that authentic love requires authentic selfhood. You cannot truly love another if you don't exist as a separate person. You cannot offer genuine intimacy if you're still trying to merge with others to avoid your own loneliness. The silence that follows breaking free from the narcissistic dynamic is profound. After years of noise, drama, chaos, emotional intensity, the quiet of your own company can feel almost overwhelming. Who are you when you're not trying to save someone? What do you want when you're not focused on what they need? This is the most important question you'll ever ask yourself. Who am I? Not who you are in relation to others, not who you need to be to earn love, not who you should be according to family, society, or the wounded parts of yourself. Who are you really in the secret chambers of your heart when no one else is watching? The answer emerges slowly, like photography developing in a dark room. You remember dreams you abandoned because they seemed too selfish. You rediscover preferences you buried because they didn't align with what others wanted. You find your voice again, maybe for the first time. You realize that your sensitivity, your depth, your capacity to feel, all the things that made you vulnerable to narcissistic manipulation, are actually your greatest gifts. They're not bugs in your system, they're features. They're not weaknesses to overcome. They're strengths to honor and protect. The narcissist served a purpose in your journey, though it was never their intention. They forced you to confront how completely you had learned to abandon yourself. They created so much pain that staying unconscious became more painful than waking up. They were the catalyst that initiated your return to yourself. Jung called this the transcendent function, the way the psyche uses even negative experiences to promote growth and wholeness. The narcissist wasn't your soulmate or your enemy. They were your teachers, showing you through their limitations exactly what you needed to stop doing to yourself. This doesn't mean you should be grateful for the abuse. It doesn't mean the relationship was meant to be. It means that your soul has the remarkable ability to transform even toxic experiences into wisdom, even betrayal into self-discovery, even heartbreak into homecoming. The person you become through this process is someone you might not recognize from your earlier self. You're less desperate for others' approval because you've learned to approve of yourself. You're less afraid of being alone because you've discovered your excellent company. You're less willing to tolerate poor treatment because you understand your own value. But here's the most beautiful part: as you individuate, as you become who you truly are, you begin to attract people who can see and appreciate your authentic self. The whole dynamic shifts. Instead of trying to earn love through self-sacrifice, you inspire love through self-possession. Your relationships become reciprocal rather than codependent. Your boundaries become invitations rather than walls. your love becomes nourishing rather than depleting. The journey isn't linear. You'll spiral back through these lessons at deeper levels throughout your life. You'll encounter other narcissistic individuals, but you'll recognize the dynamic earlier. You'll feel old patterns trying to reassert themselves, but you'll have the tools to choose differently. Each time you choose yourself over the familiar pattern of self-abandonment, you strengthen your authentic self. Each time you honor your needs alongside others, you integrate the lesson more fully. Each time you love without losing yourself, you embody the wisdom this painful journey has taught you. Jung believed that individuation, becoming who you truly are, is the highest human achievement. It's not about perfection. It's about wholeness. It's not about never being hurt. It's about learning to love and protect the parts of yourself that are tender. The empath who finally sees the narcissist clearly doesn't just see through the mask. They see through the entire dynamic. They understand that real love doesn't require you to disappear. They know that genuine connection doesn't demand self-betrayal. They recognize that their sensitivity is not a liability, but a superpower that deserves to be honored, not exploited. This transformation creates ripples that extend far beyond your personal life. Your children, if you have them, grow up with a model of what healthy boundaries look like. Your friends witness what authentic self-love looks like in action. Your very presence becomes a beacon for other empaths who are still lost in their own narcissistic entanglements. You become what Jung called a wounded healer in its truest sense. Someone whose own healing creates the capacity to guide others through similar darkness. Not by telling them what to do, but by embodying what's possible. Your empathic abilities evolve from unconscious absorption to conscious attunement. You can feel what others are experiencing without taking it on as your own. Your intuition becomes a precise instrument for discerning authentic connection from manipulation. Most importantly, you discover that the love you were seeking from the narcissist was always available. From yourself, every quality you projected onto them, strength, confidence, wholeness, already existed within you, waiting to be recognized and embraced. But the deepest transformation happens in your relationship with solitude itself. Where once you feared being alone because it meant confronting the emptiness you'd been trying to fill through others, you now cherish solitude as the space where you can hear your own voice clearly. Silence becomes sacred rather than scary. In these quiet moments, you discover parts of yourself that had been dormant for decades. The artist who stopped creating because it seemed indulgent. The dreamer who stopped imagining because it felt impractical. The leader who stopped speaking up because it seemed selfish. These aspects of your authentic self emerge from hiding, grateful to finally be welcomed home. You learn to distinguish between loneliness and aloneness. Loneliness is the ache for connection when you don't know how to connect with yourself. Aloneness is the fullness of your own presence, the contentment of your own company, the peace of not needing anyone else to validate your existence. This shift in your relationship with solitude transforms every other relationship in your life. You stop trying to use others to escape yourself and start sharing yourself with others from a place of abundance. You stop seeking someone to complete you and start looking for someone who celebrates your completeness. The quality of your presence changes dramatically. People sense immediately that you're not trying to get anything from them. Not validation, not healing, not rescue from your own emptiness. This makes you incredibly safe to be around, which allows others to relax into their own authenticity in your presence. Your nervous system, which had been chronically dysregulated by the constant drama and uncertainty of the narcissistic dynamic, begins to remember what peace feels like. You sleep more deeply. You breathe more fully. You move through the world with a groundedness that you may have never experienced before. This nervous system healing affects everything. Your decision-making becomes clearer because you're not operating from a place of chronic stress. Your creativity flows more freely because you're not constantly managing someone else's emotional state. Your intuition sharpens because you're not drowning in the emotional chaos of a dysfunctional relationship. As your authentic self emerges more fully, you may find yourself drawn to entirely new interests, relationships, and life directions. The career that felt meaningful when you were trying to save others through your work may no longer appeal to the person who has learned to save herself. The friendships built on shared dysfunction may naturally fade as you're drawn to connections based on shared growth and authenticity. This is your invitation. If you're still in the fog, trust that clarity is coming. If you're in the pain of recognition, trust that this darkness is the prelude to dawn. If you're in the early stages of reclaiming yourself, trust that every small act of self-honoring is building the foundation of a completely different life. You didn't attract the narcissist because you're broken. You attracted them because your soul knew you were ready for the journey home to yourself. The moment you finally see them clearly is the moment you begin to see yourself clearly too. And that Jung understood is when your real life finally begins. The wounded child who learned that love meant self-sacrifice has grown into the wise adult who knows that love means self-honoring. The scattered empath who absorbed everyone's pain has become the integrated healer who can hold space without taking on what isn't hers. The desperate seeker who looked for wholeness in others has become the complete being who generates wholeness from within. Welcome home to yourself. Your transformation matters more than you know. But there's something more that Jung understood about this profound transformation. Something that takes you beyond personal healing into the realm of sacred service and cosmic understanding. Jung spoke of the hieros gamos, the sacred marriage, not as union with another person, but as the integration of masculine and feminine principles within your own psyche. Your journey through narcissistic abuse has been at its deepest level preparation for this inner union. The empath often carries an overdeveloped feminine principle, receptivity, nurturing emotional attunement, the capacity to flow and adapt. But the masculine principle, assertion, boundaries, decisiveness, the capacity to stand firm and direct energy, may have been underdeveloped or distorted through trauma. The narcissist, conversely, often embodies a corrupted masculine principle: dominance without tenderness, strength without vulnerability, assertion without receptivity. They've rejected the feminine aspects of their psyche so completely that they can only relate through control and consumption. Your healing journey has been learning to integrate both principles consciously. You've developed the masculine capacity to protect your feminine sensitivity, to assert your needs while maintaining your empathy to be both strong and tender, both open and boundaried. This inner marriage creates what Jung called the transcendent function, a new way of being that transcends the limitations of either principle alone. You become capable of fierce compassion, vulnerable strength, receptive leadership. You can hold space while holding boundaries, can love deeply while loving wisely. This integration is what makes you so threatening to those still trapped in unconscious patterns. You represent the possibility of wholeness that they've rejected in themselves. Your very presence challenges their belief that they must choose between power and love, between strength and sensitivity. Jung understood that there's a profound difference between unconscious suffering and conscious suffering. Unconscious suffering is repetitive, victimizing, and ultimately meaningless. Conscious suffering is transformative, empowering, and deeply meaningful. Your time in the narcissist's Hall of Mirrors was unconscious suffering. You were trapped in patterns you didn't understand, repeating dynamics that wounded you, repeatedly hoping for outcomes that were impossible given the other person's limitations. But the moment you began to see clearly, your suffering transformed into conscious suffering. You chose to feel the full weight of your own abandonment. You chose to grieve the illusions that had protected you from harder truths. You chose to sit with the discomfort of not knowing who you were without your familiar patterns. This conscious suffering is what alchemists called the process of turning lead into gold. The lead of your unconscious patterns, transformed through the fire of conscious awareness, becomes the gold of wisdom, compassion, and authentic power. You now carry this gold within you, the capacity to transform any experience, no matter how painful, into wisdom. This doesn't mean seeking out suffering, but it does mean meeting whatever arises with consciousness rather than avoidance. This alchemical gold makes you incredibly valuable to others who are still trapped in unconscious suffering. Your presence alone demonstrates that transformation is possible, that pain can become power, that wounds can become wisdom. From Jung's perspective, your individual healing participates in the healing of the collective unconscious. Every person who breaks free from unconscious patterns contributes to the evolution of human consciousness itself. The empath-narcissist dynamic isn't just personal psychology. It's a reflection of collective wounds that humanity is attempting to heal. The split between thinking and feeling, between power and love, between masculine and feminine, between individual and collective needs. These are the great divides that our species is learning to bridge. Your personal journey of integration contributes to this larger healing. Every time you choose consciousness over unconsciousness, love over fear, authenticity over performance, you're voting for a more integrated future for humanity. This cosmic perspective doesn't minimize your personal pain, but it does contextualize it within a larger meaning. Your suffering wasn't random or meaningless. It was part of a larger evolutionary process that's happening through countless individuals around the world. You are part of a generation that's healing patterns that have existed for millennia. The empaths who are learning to maintain boundaries while keeping their hearts open, the narcissists who are beginning to access their vulnerability without losing their strength. Together, you're pioneering new ways of being human. In many indigenous traditions, the wounded healer who has journeyed through darkness and returned with wisdom is recognized as a shaman, someone who can guide others through similar territories because they've mapped the terrain themselves. Your journey through narcissistic abuse has many shamanic qualities. You've descended into the underworld of unconscious relationship patterns. You've faced the demons of self-abandonment and projection. You've died to your old identity and been reborn into a new way of being. Like the traditional shaman, you've been dismembered and reassembled. The parts of you that were scattered through unconscious giving have been reclaimed and integrated. The aspects of yourself that were projected onto others have been brought home. The energy that was hemorrhaging through poor boundaries has been contained and redirected. This shamanic initiation gives you the capacity to guide others through similar territories. Not by telling them what to do, but by embodying what's possible. Your very presence becomes medicine for those still lost in the woods of unconscious relationship. You can recognize the signs and symptoms of someone caught in narcissistic entanglement because you've been there yourself. You can sense when someone is ready for truth and when they need more time with their illusions. You can hold space for the death process that precedes rebirth. Jung believed that those who have individuated have a responsibility to speak truth to power, to challenge collective unconsciousness, to be a voice for the parts of humanity that have been silenced or marginalized. Your journey has given you a prophetic voice, the capacity to see through illusions that others still find compelling, to name dynamics that others want to keep unconscious, to speak truths that disturb comfortable lies. This prophetic function isn't about preaching or proselytizing. It's about living so authentically that your very existence challenges others to question their own unconscious patterns. It's about refusing to participate in collective delusions about what love looks like. When you maintain boundaries while keeping your heart open, you challenge the belief that love requires self-sacrifice. When you honor your sensitivity while refusing to be victimized by it, you challenge the belief that empaths are weak. When you integrate strength and tenderness, you challenge the belief that these qualities are incompatible. Your healed presence becomes a mirror that reflects back to others their own unlived possibilities. This can be uncomfortable for those who aren't ready to see, but it's essential medicine for those who are. Jung understood that our greatest wounds often become our greatest gifts, not because suffering is good, but because consciousness can transform anything into wisdom. Your empathic sensitivity, which made you vulnerable to narcissistic manipulation, has been refined into your greatest strength. Your capacity to feel deeply is now protected by wisdom and boundaries. Your ability to love is now enhanced by discernment and self-respect. The very wound that brought you into relationship with the narcissist has become a portal to your authentic power. You've learned to love yourself with the devotion you once gave to someone who couldn't receive it. You've learned to protect your sensitivity while honoring its gifts. This sacred wound continues to be a source of wisdom and compassion. When you encounter others who are struggling with similar patterns, your wound resonates with theirs in a way that creates instant understanding and trust. You don't need to explain how you know what they're going through. They can feel that you've been there. But now your wound is a healed wound, which means it can hold space for others' pain without being reopened by it. You can offer the medicine of your understanding without taking on the burden of their healing process. As you complete this journey, you may find yourself facing the ultimate paradox. The person who wounded you most deeply may also deserve your compassion. Not because they've earned it, but because you now understand the profound suffering that created their patterns. When you truly understand that their cruelty was the shadow of their own abandoned vulnerability, their manipulation was their desperate attempt to feel real, something shifts in your heart. Not back into codependence, never that, but into cosmic understanding. You see them as Jung would as a soul trapped in defensive patterns so completely they forgot there was anything else. This perspective doesn't excuse their behavior, but it adds dimension to your understanding. You can feel sad about their limitations while celebrating your freedom from them. Your journey has accelerated the development of discriminating wisdom, the ability to see clearly what is and respond appropriately. You've learned to distinguish between someone who makes mistakes and someone who refuses to learn from them, between someone going through difficulty and someone who uses pain to justify harming others. You can now sense the difference between genuine remorse and strategic apology, between authentic vulnerability and performed helplessness. This discernment extends beyond relationships into every area of life. This isn't cynicism, it's wisdom. You understand that your energy, attention, and love are precious resources that deserve wise investment. Looking back, you may wonder why you couldn't see the truth sooner. Jung would remind you that psychological insight can only emerge when consciousness is ready to receive it. Every moment of confusion served a purpose. You were gathering evidence, building the internal pressure that would eventually force transformation. Your readiness to see clearly came when your need for truth finally outweighed your need for familiar illusions. When the pain of staying unconscious became greater than the fear of waking up. This timing couldn't be rushed. It had to ripen naturally like fruit on a tree. If there's one insight that encompasses everything you've learned through this profound journey, it's this: the love you were seeking from the narcissist was always available. From yourself. Every quality you projected onto them, strength, confidence, wholeness, the capacity to love deeply, already existed within you. The narcissist couldn't give you these things because they never possessed them. They were as lost as you were, just using different strategies to cope with their sense of inadequacy and emptiness. Your entire relationship was two wounded souls trying to use each other to feel whole. But wholeness, Jung understood, can never come from another person. It can only come from the integration of all aspects of yourself: shadow and light, strength and vulnerability, masculine and feminine, human and divine. Your sensitivity isn't something to be cured or managed. It's something to be celebrated and honored. Your capacity for deep love isn't a liability. It's a gift that, when properly protected, can transform worlds. Your empathic nature isn't your weakness. It's your connection to the sacred dimension of existence. The narcissist served as a mirror, showing you what happens when these qualities are rejected and exiled. Through their inability to love, they taught you how precious love actually is. Through their cruelty, they showed you the importance of kindness. Through their emptiness, they revealed the value of authenticity. This doesn't make them your savior or excuse their behavior. It simply acknowledges the alchemical truth that consciousness can transform even the most toxic experiences into wisdom, even the deepest wounds into sources of strength. You are no longer the person who entered that relationship hoping to be saved. You are the person who learned to save yourself, not from the world, but for the world. Your light, refined by darkness, now shines more brightly than ever before. This is the ultimate revelation Jung would want you to understand. You were never broken. You were always whole. You just needed to remember who you were, beneath all the conditioning, all the wounds, all the desperate attempts to earn what was always your birthright. Your journey through the narcissist's hall of mirrors has brought you home to the truth of who you are. And from this place of authentic selfhood, you can finally offer the world what it has been waiting for. Your unique gifts, your refined love, your hard-won wisdom, your unshakable presence. The empath who finally sees clearly doesn't just see through the narcissist's mask. They see through all illusions to the truth that love is your natural state, wholeness is your birthright, and your sensitivity is the sacred gift the world desperately needs. Welcome to your real life. It has just begun. Now that you understand the profound psychological dimensions of your journey, let's explore how to live this transformation practically. Jung believed that true individuation must be embodied in ordinary life. Your new relationship with yourself becomes the template for all others. Begin each day by checking in with yourself before attending to others' needs. Place your hand on your heart and ask, what do I need today? How am I feeling? Practice conscious boundaries, not walls to keep people out, but conscious choices about how to engage. When someone asks for your time or energy, pause and feel into your response. Ask yourself, am I giving from abundance or depletion? Can I help without abandoning myself? Shadow integration. When you notice old patterns arising, the urge to fix someone, the impulse to explain away poor treatment, pause and dialogue with this part of yourself. I see you. I understand you learned these strategies to survive. Now I have new ways to keep us safe. Somatic wisdom practice. Listening to your body's wisdom. Your gut knows the difference between loving requests and manipulative demands. Your shoulders know when you're carrying what isn't yours. Reparenting your inner child practice, speaking to your wounded parts with love. Your feelings are valid. Your needs matter. You are worthy of love exactly as you are. Your empathic abilities become tools for conscious service rather than unconscious suffering. Practice feeling into situations without immediately trying to fix or accommodate what you sense. You can feel someone's pain without assuming responsibility for healing it. Your presence becomes healing because you've learned to maintain emotional center while witnessing others deeply. This makes you incredibly valuable. People sense that you see them clearly without trying to rescue them from their growth process. Environmental design. Consciously create spaces that support your authentic self. Spend time in nature. Surround yourself with objects that remind you of your worth. Relationship audit. Not everyone will celebrate your transformation. Some were comfortable with a version of you who always said yes. Be prepared to lovingly release relationships that can't accommodate your growth. Community creation. Seek out people committed to conscious living and authentic relating. You need witnesses to your transformation, companions for the ongoing journey of individuation. Your transformation is a gift to the world. Share your insights, support others on their journey, and remember, every authentic choice you make creates ripples of healing that extend far beyond what you can see. The wounded healer has become the conscious creator. Your real work is just beginning. If this transformation resonates with your soul, share your story in the comments below. Your voice matters more than you know. Subscribe to continue this sacred journey of awakening together. And remember, you are not just healing yourself. You are healing the world one authentic relationship at a time.